Ladies and gentlemen, most of you, of course, are familiar with our first speaker, Phil Rushton. In fact, if you're not, you've got some explaining to do. And you should definitely, in fact, order you to go out and buy his book, Race, Evolution, and Behavior. It's really one of the great works ever written about race. And in a sane world, Phil Rushton would be widely honored for his contributions to science, but given the insane world we live in, he's been insulted and reviled, but of course never refuted. All the same, he had to fight for years to retain his position as professor of psychology at Western Ontario University in the face of a concerted effort to have him fired. Now, throughout this period, Professor Rushton's cheerful and polite persistence has been an inspiration to everyone who knows him. And I think it is his careful and dedicated pursuit to the truth has finally worn down his opposition and reduced them to baffled and frustrated silence. As a consequence, Professor Rushton is probably more active in research now than at any time. He's working with colleagues all over the world. For example, one of his studies now has to do with the link between maternal IQ and infant death rates among gypsies in Serbia. He's also working on the heritability of personality and intelligence among South Korean twins. In his spare time, if he ever has any, he's working on a book that covers the last 150 years of race research and behavioral genetics research. He really is one of the great psychology researchers of our time, and it's a great pleasure and honor to have him speak with us today, and he will speak on the question of the heritability of world IQ differences. So please welcome Phil Rushton.
Well, thank you very much. It's lovely to be here again. And I'm going to have a whole lot of slides to show. So these people down here, I don't know whether you're going to be able to see them. I don't know whether you want to stand at the back there. They're going to be showing them throughout the whole half hour, so it's up to you. I had moved this way back here at one point so that you could see it a little bit better. Okay. And I apologize in advance also for the fact that some of the talk is a little more technical today than perhaps you're used to, but that's only going to be about 5 minutes, and so you'll be able to get the gist anyway of what I'm trying to say. The title of the talk is The Heritability of World IQ Differences. And I want to say what the IQ differences around the world are, and then ask the question of, can we know whether these differences are due to the genes, or are they just due to cultural factors? And I will be arguing that it's due to the genes and providing some good new evidence to show that. So if we can have the next slide. This is a picture of the world IQ map of the indigenous populations of the world as they existed around 1490. The data are legion. There's about 620 studies now of IQ from about 120 nations. They have been collated by Richard Lynn more than anybody else. His 2 books are on sale from Louis Andrews, Washington Summit Publishers. You can buy them. They're great books. Also, Michael Hart has a new book out on IQ and how they originated from an evolutionary perspective as the populations moved around the world. And his is a new book. It's well recommended. So if you're in the book buying mode, there's 3 of them you can buy. In any case, this is a summary. And what I want to do is to very quickly just highlight 2 or 3 aspects of the map, especially for those of you who can't see it. The standardized IQ is, if you look at Eurasia, from England all the way through Western Europe out to Siberia and out of Mongolia, the average IQ is 100. And what that means is, in effect, the general intelligence or cognitive ability of a 16-year-old. So that is like the standard benchmark against which everything else is calibrated. And there are various corrections and calibrations that are required of a technical nature, but we won't get into that. Just take my word for it that the average is 100, standardized on Europe, and everything else is relative to that. And so then I'll take your attention to sub-Saharan Africa. There, the average IQ is 70. And in the Western world, we often think of an IQ of 70 as being borderline mentally retarded. But that's not a really useful way of looking at sub-Saharan African IQ. Africans are not borderline retarded. It's much better to look at them as having a mental age relative to the 16-year-olds of Europe of about 11-year-olds. And of course, an 11-year-old is not mentally retarded. An 11-year-old can do, cognitively speaking, all kinds of things. They can work in factories and under supervision at pretty high technical levels in factories. They can work in the fields. Obviously, they can make war, houses, and so on. Kalashnikov, who invented the great gun that is preferred in South Africa, and Southern Asia, says even children can use this gun and maintain it. And that's sort of like an estimate of what you can do as an 11-year-old with cognitive ability. Now, there are about 60 or 70 studies from East, West, Central, and South Africa. And a lot of people say, well, I just don't believe an IQ of 70 for black Africa. But as I'll come on to, it's a very reliable finding. In fact, as I say, there are 620 studies, so there's a lot of reliability in these measures. If I take your attention now to the yellow part of the map, which is China, Japan, these are East Asians. And it comes as a surprise to some people to learn that East Asians actually have a slightly higher IQ than do Europeans. If Europeans are standardized at a cognitive ability of about 16, East Asians have a cognitive ability of a 17-year-old. And this is very reliable again. And it doesn't matter whether you look at the East Asians in China and Japan or whether you look at their immigrants in other countries of the world. It's amazing how critics of IQ studies never ever focus on that particular measure. They only focus on the black Africans being so much lower. I should also mention, I suppose, that black Americans, African Americans, have an IQ of 85, which is midway between the sub-Saharan African IQ of 70 and the European IQ of 100. I'll very briefly just mention the American Indians, North and South America. The average IQ there is about 85. Now, the Hispanic populations that are coming into the United States in particular have a higher IQ than that. It's about 90, maybe even 92, some people will argue. And the Hispanics, of course, are a hybrid mixed-race population of Spanish whites plus American Indians. And so they will have a slightly higher IQ as a result.